Oh, we are back with you live once again on another Johnny Torch live broadcast. Broadcast number 271. And we bring to you today our 300th, is it possible? Our 300th Torch News Roundup? Wow, 300. Imagine that. Hard to believe, huh? We've been plugging away at this pop culture thing for quite a while now. So this is going to be a really big show for the 300th Torch News Roundup edition. I remember back when it was just it wasn't live. It was just like 10 minutes of me doing a couple of stories from, the latest in pop culture. And we've kind of expanded on that now to give you a show that typically lasts about an hour. And we thank you for being there. God love you for being there and listening to the show when you can, or listening to it in rerun, so to speak. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe. I noticed I've lost a subscriber. Very, very sad. Very broken up about that. Hopefully one of you good people will replace whoever that square was who decided to bail on the channel. But it takes all kinds, doesn't it? That's the way it goes, I guess. You win some, you lose some. You lose a couple of people. As long as I got the good people, that's all that matters. Well, let's not take too much time here going over the usual stuff, but of course I do have to plug The Adventures of Bullets, Bourbon, Private Eye. And if you check the link in the description below, you can find my website where you can check out The Adventures of Bullets, Bourbon, Private Eye. Now, very important note here. We have a half-price sale going on at Global Comics. So if you check the link in the description, you go to my website, and if you hit the link to Global Comics, it'll take you right there. And you can pick up the individual issues for as little as $2 now. From my birthday for the full following month, it's going to be a half-price sale. Yes, my 39th birthday has occurred yet again, and I'm going to share the presents with you guys by making Bullets Bourbon even more affordable. I mean, come on, it's not that expensive to begin with, but now you can get the book for $2 each. And of course, some of the earlier graphic novels that I've remastered and put together in remastered graphic novel format is a little more expensive, but you get more pages, so it works out. The image we got right here on screen right now is the upcoming issue, Casebook 14, Gimme Shelter, the second act of the Against All Odds arc. And I got a couple of images on Twitter that you can check out and see how it's going. Unfortunately, it's going very slowly. I'd like to say that I'm at the coloring stage, but we're still at the inking stage, and probably will be there for the foreseeable future. So hopefully that'll change, and we'll get to the coloring stage. But as of now, we're probably, I want to say 3/4 of the way done with the inking. So we got a little bit to go still for that. But this is a very exciting issue. Bullets is poisoned, and he faces his most powerful opponent, physically powerful, the most, strong opponent he's ever faced, in General Diesel, the head of the infamous battery pack, who's come from the sovereign state of Batonia in hopes of conquering this great nation of ours, the United States of America. The only one who stands in his way, of course, is Bullets Bourbon. And as I said before, unfortunately, Bullets is poisoned, so he's kind of got one foot in the grave. It's not going to be easy. It never is with Bullets, right? He's always got to have some kind of disadvantage. Otherwise, what fun would it be? So, as you can see here, his only protectors, rival detective Horatio T. Scotch. Doesn't look like he's being very useful here in this case, and Veronica Sinclair also being abducted by the battery pack. So you're going to have to tune in and find out. You can catch up on this story on Global Comics. If you check the link in the description below, you could also find them, the hard copies, over on Indie Planet, which I prefer selling the hard copies because I prefer people having classic comics in their hands. But if you want a digital copy, you can still get them at Indie Planet, or you could get them in Global Comics. Again, the Global Comics site has the sale for half price. Very excited about the future of Bullets Bourbon Comics. We're hoping that we can get this going and get the issues out to you a little more regularly. So far, it's been one issue a year. I was hoping to keep pace with 2 a year like I've been doing, but unfortunately, life has other ideas, as they say. All right, so let me take a look here at the comments. Our pal Hunter Iggy says, Johnny Torch, what are your thoughts on people's overreaction on the Lantern series? We are going to get to that later on tonight. But that is the story of the day, isn't it? The Lantern series. That's going to be something that we're going to get into. First off, though, before I get into the news stories of the day, we also have some other business I was hoping to bring to your attention. On my Twitter page, as I said, if you check the link in the description, you can get to my website where you can go to my Twitter page. We have a poll there, and since we just started this poll today, there's 6 days left. 29 votes so far, which is pretty good for me for a poll without any retweets. Got about, 500 impressions, it says here. And the question this week is, all right, once and for all, who is Sadie Sink playing in Spider-Man Brand New Day? Now, we still haven't had a trailer for this movie. The movie will be out, I believe May, or is it May or June? I'm not sure. But we still don't have confirmation who Sadie Sink is playing. Now, the news sites, the pundits, they're all saying she's going to play Jean Grey. That seems to be the general consensus. Some possibly leaked dialogue has her talking about her psychic powers or something. Well, head on over to my page on Twitter and you can vote in the poll and say exactly who you think it'll be. We've got 4 options. Of course, Jean Grey is running away with it, 72.4% of the vote. A brand new character is in second place with 20% of the vote. And Mary Jane, or another character we know, such as I've heard suggested, Starfire, what is it? Sunfire? Yeah, there's 2 different companies there. But, there's a couple of, there's a character associated with the Punisher, and since the Punisher is going to be in this movie, it may be her. Could be Mayday Parker, could be anybody. There's a possibility that it's a comic character, but we just don't know. And, of course, seeing as how the MCU isn't very accurate with their casting in the Spider-Man universe, she could be playing Gwen Stacy for all we know, even though Sadie Sink is a redhead. Common sense would say she'd be better suited for Mary Jane, but they might not see it that way. They had a good actress for Gwen Stacy in Betty Brant. And again, that's kind of, they don't really stick to the comic book look. So anyway, head on over and check out that poll. And all right, we will begin our first story here with some Sonic the Hedgehog news has dropped for Sonic 4. Sonic 4's casting is underway, and Jeff Fowler, the franchise director, confirmed that Frozen star Kristen Bell will be playing the voice of Amy Rose. Amy Rose, of course, from the Sonic video games. And also, the Insider is reporting that Wonder Man star Sir Ben Kingsley is joining the movie in a key role. There is, as of now, no word on who he's playing or whether this is a voiceover part. Very interesting, Ben Kingsley. Of course, he's leaned into comedy heavily in recent years. I thought he was great as Trevor Slattery in the Iron Man series / Shang-Chi. I think chances are he's going to play a human character in this. I'm afraid to say that he's probably going to take the bulk of screen time away from Jim Carrey, because I think if they get Jim Carrey back, which they seem to be able to do, it's like the only thing he's doing nowadays is Sonic the Hedgehog movies as Robotnik. Maybe his screen time will be decreased. I'm not sure. And I think maybe Ben Kingsley will be sort of the, first tier villain. And maybe Jim Carrey might not be doing as much heavy lifting. There was the big controversy about Jim Carrey getting Botox or whatever in his face. People saying he was a clone. People saying it was a man in a mask. There's so much craziness going on. I don't know if Jim Carrey maybe is stepping back now, because he did some weird stuff to his face, and maybe that's a sign that he's not going to try to play the wildly expressive characters he has in the past, and he's just going to, try to maybe concentrate on a leading man role again, which he hasn't in a while. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 will star Ben Schwartz as the titular character alongside Idris Elba as Knuckles and Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Tails, reprising her role from the games. It's not clear whether Keanu Reeves will be back as Shadow, but the human cast will likely be rounded out by James Marsden, Tika Sumpter, and Lee Majdoub. Am I saying that right? I don't know. Jim Carrey is expected to return as the villainous Dr. Robotnik, though that's yet to be confirmed. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 races into theaters March 19th, 2027. So, about a year from now, we will find out what's going on. Of course, I think we'll find out by then if Jim Carrey's going to be back as Robotnik. It seems to be the safe bet. But, again, you never know. You never know with these things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited for Sonic 4? I know Sonic's rival, the Mario Galaxy movie, whatever that is, that's coming up this year. I've seen the first movie. I like the first movie. Looking forward to the sequel. Hopefully it will be good. I'm not that familiar with the video games. Unfortunately, I don't play a lot of them. Again, I've always said it's kind of a time waster, honestly, because the time I would take playing a video game, I could be spent on the book. And so I try not to take too much time. Now my PlayStation 4 is conked out, and there's not much I can do with it. So chances are I'm probably not going to be playing any games in the foreseeable future either. But if you're familiar with the Sonic or Mario worlds, you probably got a leg up on the situation, because I'm not exactly sure where they're going. That's why it surprised me, Sonic 3, the way it turned out. Now, other people had played the games and kind of knew what to expect. I didn't. So that's pretty exciting. All right, next up in this story, some sad news. We have to bid a fond farewell to Sal Buscema from passing on last month, I believe it was. I believe at the age of 89, I imagine from just natural causes. One of my favorite artists, the premier Hulk artist, obviously. I mean, to take nothing away from Kirby and Trimpy, but to me, Sal Buscema was the top dog. And the Hulk is my favorite character. I grew up loving the Hulk, and my earliest memories are of watching the TV show and reading the comics, my mother reading the comics to me, because I was even too young to read at that point. And so I basically, grew up on Sal Buscema's Hulk comics. And again, he was the consummate Hulk artist, but not only for the Hulk. I mean, he did a stint, I think, in Spider-Man. I've got several of those issues that was really good. I think it was the big final resolution between Spider-Man and Harry as the Green Goblin. I don't remember the number of that issue, but that was like another landmark issue. But again, all of our greatest artists now are passing on, and it's very sad to have to let them go. I mean, we lost John Romita. I remember eulogizing him, John Romita Sr., of course, a year or so ago. And he's also one of my favorite top 5 artists, Jazzy Johnny, and now Sal sadly leaving. Of course, his brother John was a great artist in his own right as well. I think he passed on like a good 7 or 8 years ago now. John. Man, Steve Ditko passed on, half a dozen years ago too, something like that. We lost Jim Shooter. I think it was late last year. So again, it's sad seeing a lot of our heroes passing on in the comics field. We have, of course, Stan the Man Lee. It's only been a few years, removed from his passing as well. And it's going to be sad to have to see so many of them leaving us. And another thing I loved about Buscema's work is he did the most beautiful women. That's another thing, like Jazzy Johnny. He did Betty Ross, Drop Dead Gorgeous. And that was another thing that was like so much fun to see in the comics, because Betty was a big deal for the Hulk back then. And all the tumultuous, problems they put, Bruce and Betty through. Betty was sort of, estranged from Bruce for a long time during this run with Buscema. And, she was married to Glenn Talbot, and all kinds of other stuff kept them apart. And it was sad because he stuck with the book, and, the book declined, a very steep drop off at a certain point, because then they put Banner's brain in the Hulk's body, and then they did the completely savage Hulk, and he was off with pixies and elves or whatever. And it was at that point I was kind of like really strained to keep interest in the book. And then of course Peter David, who also passed on. And again, I didn't really mention Peter David's passing because I'm not a big fan of his. Again, it's a tragedy that he passed. I know he was in ill health for several years, but I mean, the real decline of the Hulk was under his watch, when he brought in Grey Hulk and Mr. Fix-It and all that stuff that really drove a wedge between the savage Hulk that I'd come to love and what the Hulk is now, which is basically anything anybody wants him to be. You can see that in the MCU. It's very disheartening. But anyway, so once again, just a fond tip of the cap and a 10-bell salute to the great Sal Buscema, who passed on this year. One of the last greats in comics, in Marvel especially, but in comics in general. And very sad to see him go, because I know he worked, pretty much up to a year or two ago, I think. I think he was working into his 80s. And maybe just a couple of years ago he had retired. But very sad news. So thank you for your service to comicdom, Sal Buscema. All right, so let's talk about something a little more happy now. We're going to talk about the Daredevil second trailer. Daredevil Born Again Season 2 is going to come out in a couple of weeks. This is something that I've been really excited about, because if you don't know me, haven't followed the channel for too long, I didn't really like the Netflix Daredevil show. I wasn't a big fan of any of their series, and we're going to talk about the similarities of the Netflix shows to Lanterns, which is coming up, and we're going to talk about that, so be patient. But one of the problems I had with Daredevil was it was too, well, for starters, grim and gritty. Again, they were trying to appeal to the adult audience. You had, excessive violence. You had some, maybe some swear words. I don't remember too many. But, I think especially with the Punisher, when he came in, there was some excessive language. And my whole thing is always, you should make the comic book characters accessible in live action to the children. I'm not one of these guys that are always, we need a R-rated Batman, we need an R-rated Wolverine, we need an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I believe these things should be accessible. And, of course, you have PG-13 films. You can kind of push the boundaries of that, particularly in this day and age, very extremely. I mean, I think you can get away with at least one F-bomb, and there might be even some brief nudity you can get away with in a PG-13 film. There really isn't any need to have to go all the way crossing the Rubicon into R-rated territory. So I really wasn't a fan of what they were doing. Now, as the show progressed, because they did the same thing that they all do, grounded in gritty realism. Daredevil doesn't have a super suit. He doesn't have the red costume at the beginning. He's wearing black sweat togs, and same thing as Arrow. We have to build him up. He doesn't really get his name and persona and logo and all that for a while. And so we hit the second season. We bring in more elements from the comics. It's kind of like par for the course. This is what they do. And the third season, again, I felt like they kind of regressed because, again, it went back to Daredevil not really wearing the costume and this and that. But the storyline was good. It was pretty solid at that point. I always say my favorite part of the Netflix Daredevil shows was the Punisher segment, like the first, whatever it was, 4 or 5 episodes of the Punisher before they got into the Elektra thing, which they probably should have saved for a whole other season. And I really liked the stuff they did with Matt and his mother in the third season. I guess that was kind of their version of Born Again. And the characters, of course, I loved the characters, Foggy and Karen. They were given, great, emphasis in the show. Then we got the show canceled, and then we got Daredevil Born Again. And people were harsh on it because Daredevil Born Again was originally conceived to be very different than what it became, because they wanted to do a complete revamp. They wanted to write out Foggy and Karen, and they just wanted to focus on Matt, and they went through the whole rejiggering of he's not going to be Daredevil again, which we had done like 3 times already. They were doing that again, that story. And to the credit of Kevin Feige and the big wigs there at Marvel, they understood that something was not right with the show as they were doing it. It was the woke version. And fortunately, because of COVID, they stopped production for a while, and they had a chance to look back at what they'd shot. And especially the stars, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, offered their criticism of it, that it wasn't up to the standards of what the show had set in the previous incarnation. They had fired the actress who played Vanessa. I can't pronounce her name. I'm not even going to try. And so one of the first things they did was to bring her back, eliminate all the scenes with the other actress. And they retooled this from the footage they had to try to salvage the season by making it more in line with the MCU. Now, that is why I liked this season, the first season of Born Again, because while you can see the rough edges that they were trying to smooth over not being completely eliminated from the season, you can tell that they are pushing the boundaries now of doing the superhero story. The superhero side of Daredevil now is coming out. They had that killer beginning, and Foggy dies, but they had that killer beginning with Daredevil fighting Bullseye. They had a pretty good finish at the end of the season, and it's really exciting. I mean, I feel like somebody finally gets Daredevil now. Now that they're on Disney, they actually have a chance to do the things that Daredevil couldn't do on Netflix, or they wouldn't allow him to do. And I especially appreciate that now you can use some of the CGI not only to show the high-flying spectacle and Daredevil stunts. That's why he's called the Daredevil, because he does these crazy stunts up in the air. But you can also have a better sense of the radar sense that he has. We only seen that briefly, I think, in the first season. I don't remember seeing that again. And fortunately, now you've got the CGI and you've got the budget that you could probably do some interesting things with that. Hopefully, they'll pick up that ball and run with it at some point. But as for this trailer, I don't have a whole lot to say. They really don't show a lot. Everybody's talking about this scene with Bullseye in a diner. And I really hope and pray that they'll finally give him a costume. Please, just give him a costume. We don't need any more. I think this will be, the third season that involves this character. 3 seasons is enough. Just get him in the costume. Let's finally see Bullseye fully orbed and ready to go. But we've got Bullseye in a diner, and that's like a kid in a candy store because he can use anything as a weapon. And here you've got spoons, forks, knives. You know, the only thing that would be more funny would be to see him in a stationery store where he's killing people with like severe paper cuts, like throwing sheets of paper and just killing people, or like, you know, we've seen him do the paperclip, I think, before, but, you know, things like that, you know, a pen, you know, those are the kind of things that what make him what he is that he could use any object and make it a deadly weapon. And so that's kind of what we want to see from Bullseye. And I think we're going to get that here. They show Jessica Jones has returned. That's been, you know, built up for quite a while now that she's coming back. And again, I'm not a huge fan of Jessica Jones, the character. I seen the first season, and that was pretty good. I'd really like to see them use Hellcat. I don't know if they ever used her in that Beyond, because she was in her civilian identity in the first season, Patsy Walker. And I would like to see them actually do something with her going forward in that traditional yellow costume, especially. That would be great. But if they could do something with her, bringing her into the show, because, you know, apparently, especially going by this trailer, Daredevil's building up a team. He's bringing a team together, and that's why Jessica Jones becomes one of these recruits. And of course, he has Karen Page. I think in the last trailer we saw a glimpse of Foggy, so either it's a flashback or he is going to come back. I think what's going to happen is I think Vincent D'Onofrio will, you know, let the cat out of the bag that Kingpin's mayoral storyline ends this season. And they're already working on next season. And I think what's going to happen is Foggy's going to come back and become mayor, because that happened in the comics as well. He was a mayor for a while, and then he came back to Nelson and Murdoch or whatever. And I have a feeling that's going to happen in this season. But, you know, there's not too much in this trailer, the second trailer, to really give away what else is going to happen. But apparently, as they say, stuff is going to hit the fan, and it's really going to juice up the storyline. And the third season is, I think, already underway. So that's great that we already are promised a third season. And that dovetails into the next story we have here. Let's get to the next story. Now, people are wondering, now that we have Jessica Jones, what are the possibilities of Luke Cage and Iron Fist returning? Now, a rumor dropped this week that Iron Fist is going to return. It is going to be Finn Jones, because there was a lot of speculation, and it still could be possible that he's going to hand off the mantle to someone else. I think Colleen Wing, it's been so long since I've seen the second season. I think he was sort of training her or something to sort of, you know, and they were kind of thinking that she was going to be a successor. It's still possible. I don't know. But I really hope that they give Finn Jones another chance and actually have him wear the Iron Fist costume. I mean, he really needs to wear that costume, because Iron Fist is one of those characters, you can't just do him as a dude with a glowing hand. You know, they did that. They did it as long as they could. Let's put it that way. He's got to get some kind of version of the costume with the mask, and that really will help push things along. Now, we don't have any confirmation here, but last year, Finn Jones said that he was willing to return to the character if asked. Now, here's the quote. "There's a willingness for the fans to see that happen. There's a lot of willingness for the fans to see that not happen as well. I'm very aware of the critiques of the character and my role in it. My response to that is like, give me a chance, man. I'm here and I'm ready. I want to prove people wrong, so I'd love to see that happen." So it sounds like he is more than anxious to return if given the opportunity. According to Cryptic 4K Kwa, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, the plan is for Jones to step back into the role of Danny Rand, and if he doesn't actually appear in season 2, his return will be teased for the following season. Now, meanwhile, the other half of the equation, Heroes for Hire. I mean, I would love to just see a TV series of Heroes for Hire, which is where I think this is going, the reintroduction of the quote-unquote Defenders. Mike Coulter was asked if he'll return as Luke Cage in the MCU. And he was quoted as saying, "I do think now it's time. I think you know Daredevil's back. I've had discussions with Marvel, and I do think that it's very, very likely that I will come back at some point, but I don't know when. But I think I will." So, this is probably just, kind of misdirection. Probably they already are in season 3, the pair of them. And this is probably just, some minor deflection to make sure that it doesn't take the steam away from season 2, where it's probably just Jessica Jones. But I think it's safe to say that we'll see these guys again. Hopefully it leads to that Heroes for Hire show. And again, hopefully, just hopefully, mind you, they'll be able to build on this, because it's like everything kind of got the rug pulled out from underneath them, from Netflix, from the cancellations, leaving a lot of these story arcs in the lurch. And seeing as how they are now being folded into the MCU, I think it's time to really just, smooth out the storyline and get resolution for some of these characters. And, hopefully they'll get several seasons. I'm not saying like they just need one season to tie up all the loose ends, but they should be able to sort of tie up the loose ends and give them a decent playing field to continue those storylines for the foreseeable future, at least. All right, so that is all we have here, except the story of the night. Yes, we are going to talk Lanterns, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you looking forward to Daredevil Born Again Season 2? And would you like to see a Heroes for Hire series, a Jessica Jones rebooted series or something? What would you like to see? All right, so Greenless Lanterns. This is going to be a humdinger of a topic, so everybody sit down, get ready to listen to the rant, because here it comes. Now, anybody knows me knows that I am the most level-headed of all commentators. You know what I mean? I am not going to fly off the handle. I'm not given to wild hyperbole. I am not going to, jump on something and completely run it into the ground as if it was my life's blood on YouTube or Twitter. But I have to admit, this show does not look like anything that I want to see in a Green Lantern show. And a lot of people seem to have hitched their wagon to that same emotion. And this became a huge brouhaha over on Twitter and all throughout the internet, reverberating in all corners of the internet, on Twitter, on YouTube, everywhere. And the problem is that it doesn't really look like a Green Lantern show. Now, again, they're trying to do what I was just talking about a few moments ago with Netflix Daredevil. They did it with Arrow. They're trying to start by having it grim and gritty and grounded, and they want to, I imagine, build up from that into the full-blown superhero experience. The problem is, fans don't really have the patience for that anymore. Fans don't want you to go into a franchise embarrassed. Now, for some reason, WB was extremely embarrassed by the 2011 Green Lantern movie by Ryan Reynolds. Now, honestly speaking, I didn't think it was horrible. It wasn't great. It wasn't particularly edited well. I didn't like Hector Hammond, the choice of him for the villain. Honestly, he had too much to do in the film, and he was not a very compelling character. Those were my issues. I would have chosen some other villain, or maybe made that villain have more oomph, so to speak. But that was my biggest problem with it. It was also edited poorly. The tone was off. I mean, a little jokey for my style. But again, it kind of touched base on all the areas of Green Lantern. You had Oa, you had the alien lanterns, you had Abin Sur in the ring choosing Hal. You pretty much kept Carol Ferris. You pretty much kept the spirit of Green Lantern from the comics, particularly the early age, which is what I think they were kind of trying to go for. But again, WB learned the wrong lesson from that, and they took a complete overhaul of the franchise, of the concept, and did a complete 180. They just completely went in the other direction, and now we don't have Oa, we don't have aliens, we don't have. I'm sure there's going to be some constructs in the show, maybe one or two. We don't really have any costumes. We get a look at the costume briefly, which, by the way, I've got that image here somewhere, I think. All right, we've got the image of the costume. A lot of people hated this as well. I don't really mind that there's a tangible costume. I think in the early comics he had a costume like every other superhero. It was just a costume, and then it became a construct of the ring. I personally would prefer just having a costume, because I think the concept of you have to have the will to keep the construct going, and if your mind is being, your mind is going elsewhere because you're fighting this huge alien beast or something. How are you going to concentrate on keeping your clothes on? I don't know. So this doesn't bother me that that's a costume. I mean, a lot of people went nuts about that. Also, the colors look very dark and very muted. Again, something like Arrow. I think this is supposed to represent, though, the condition of Hal Jordan in the show, where Hal Jordan is sort of tired, worn down, dull, and doesn't have his mojo. And I think that's supposed to represent that. I think once he puts that costume back on, it'll probably reflect a more powerful Hal Jordan. But he's not wearing it during this show, at least not from what we've seen. Maybe at the end of the show, another Daredevil season 1 where they put it on near the last 10 minutes of the show. So, I mean, that's entirely possible. Another thing people complained about was Hal flying without the green aura around him. Some people said that, I didn't notice this, but they did the same thing in Superman with Guy Gardner. And I don't really have a problem with that. I think he has the green aura around him when he's flying through space because, for protection and be able to breathe and this and that. So that makes sense. I don't mind so much that it's not there. But again, trying to do the grounded and gritty, realistic thing, that's the dark, muted colors. That's going back to the Snyder era. And personally, I don't like the Snyder era. I didn't like that. I didn't like the dark, muted colors. I didn't like the trying to be semi-realistic or whatever. And it feels like we're taking a step back there, too. We've got Hal Jordan sort of being like Batman was, the grizzled veteran. Now, how do you start your Green Lantern franchise with Hal Jordan, not the first Green Lantern, but the best Green Lantern, and he's on his way out? Why do you do that? I don't understand it. And when you see these actors, they look good for the roles. I mean, I don't really have a problem with either of them. But again, you start your universe with a beat down Batman who's already seen everything, he's already fought everybody, he's dull and jaded, and where do you go from there with that? You put him up against Superman, you let them butt heads, and then you finally say, now Batman's acting like Batman. He learned his lesson. He came out of it through his wilderness experience, and now he's going to be a proper Batman. And we've seen how that worked in the Snyderverse. It was terrible. And I get the feeling the same thing's going to happen here. We've already had a Hal Jordan that supposedly did everything. I mean, we've got him being, treated as if he is the top dog in this trailer. So he already's seen everything, done everything, probably beat all his villains. Then why does he act like he's never talked to other Green Lanterns? Because they're aliens. I mean, that was probably the biggest what the heck of all. He says he's the only human lantern. But then again, Guy Gardner is in Superman. Now, maybe he doesn't know that there's another human lantern. I don't know. But that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just a lot of this is, and I think Guy Gardner is supposed to be in an episode or two. I mean, this is not something that they're not trying to connect to the Gunverse at large. this is supposed to link up with Superman to some extent. Again, I feel like this is just a step back from what we were doing. I mean, with Superman, I was happy we were going back to the full 4-color concept, colorful heroes, colorful villains. You're going to put everything that was in the comics on the screen. You're not going to be embarrassed by it. Just go for it, just go for it. And then we take a tremendous step back here because, and again, I don't think this is Gunn's fault. A lot of people want to blame Gunn because they hate Gunn. And I mean, that's fine. You can hate Gunn as much as you want. But Snyder didn't do anything with Green Lantern either. He did what? A cameo shot of, I guess it was supposed to be Jon Stewart. And then maybe he had like a couple of seconds of the lanterns in the background during a flashback. I didn't see the Snyder version of Justice League, but apparently that's kind of all they let him do because Warner Brothers is so terrified of Green Lantern. He's persona non grata. And for some reason, orders came down from on high not to use a Green Lantern in a strong capacity. We got that changed a little bit now with Guns using Guy Gardner, but that's because they were going to reintroduce the Green Lantern Corps this way. And again, I mean, let's take a look at another image here. What do we got for villains? We got cowboys. Cowboys for villains in a Green Lantern show. Now, Green Lantern, for those of you who don't know, and I don't claim to be at all an authority on Green Lantern. I didn't read a whole lot of him as a kid. I knew him mostly from Justice League comics because he was a character sort of like Thor, for instance. Didn't really grab my fancy as a kid, but I still, you know these characters by osmosis from reading Avengers or from Thor. From Justice League. It's difficult to get that wrong. But when you go to the concept of Green Lantern, it's a space opera. It's about space cops, and they're patrolling different sectors, and they're fighting intergalactic threats, and their council, their head, is a bunch of little blue men that look like Yoda. And the idea is that they're policing the galaxy. Now, why would you pick that concept to have your two biggest protagonists from that title wander around the Midwest on Earth and have the villains be cowboys? It is just ludicrous. I don't understand. Now, like I said, I am not one to fly off the handle with a lot of these things because I'm of the wait and see variety. I'm not going to just take a trailer and beat it into the ground and be like, oh, Superman's costume doesn't look perfect. I am going to flip out about that. No, I mean, I thought his costume looked good, so they put a few lines on it. All right, I can live with it. But when you have a trailer that basically shows everything opposite of what you expect in a Green Lantern show, that show is not going to give you, if you're a diehard Green Lantern fan, what you came to see. I mean, I cannot give this trailer the benefit of the doubt that it is not going to lie to you. It is not going to give you huge, epic space battle set pieces. Because if they had that, I guarantee they would lead with that. They do not have that. They are not going to go to space with this. If they do it at the end of the season or a flashback or something, but they are not going to involve the other lanterns or whatever. We know Sinestro's supposed to be in this. I imagine he's going to have something to do with this, even though I don't think it's going to be a very big part he's going to play in this. We'll see. But again, I'm not a contrarian. I'm not a Pollyanna. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think, and I think this trailer is showing you what this show is. And it's basically, I guess, I don't watch True Detectives. I don't watch Yellowstone. I guess these are shows that they were trying to go for with this. They were trying to take Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart and put them in a Midwestern detective show. Now, again, what they probably want to do is test the waters. They're afraid. They want to get people to come in that don't really know a lot about Green Lantern, except maybe from seeing the movie in 2011. And they want to say, we're starting on the ground floor. We're going to build up to the space stuff. That's the only thing I can imagine they're going to go with this, because I can't see this going on and being successful, particularly in multiple seasons. Now, there was a clip of the showrunner saying they called it Lanterns because Green Lantern is a silly title. I'm not going to jump on that because, again, I'm not one of these guys that is just going to take clickbait and just run with it and beat it into the ground. I think that guy was doing a bit. I think he was just making a joke. If that's what he truly believes, it's going to be hard to deny that that's what he's done here. But again, I try not to let these things get out of hand. Now, again, we've got Hal Jordan dropping like 3 F-bombs in this trailer. I don't think he dropped all 3. I'll be fair about it, but that's not, again, something you want to introduce your kids to. Now, why wouldn't you want the high-flying fantasy of a Green Lantern to appeal to kids? I don't get it. Why do that? Especially when you have Guy Gardner in the Superman movie, and a lot of kids probably liked him. They probably thought he was funny. He's a goof, kind of, with a silly haircut. They want to see more Green Lantern. They come into this show. They're not allowed to watch this show, or if they do, the parents got to block their ears a couple of times, maybe block their eyes. Who knows what this pertains to. But again, you're kneecapping half your audience. This is another thing that you just don't do. And again, I know a lot of people are going to jump on it, and in this case, it's true. There's a good chance, good possibility, this could be woke, because we have Jon Stewart, who is, I guess he's been in training a couple of months. He already is saying that Hal is tired, worn out, useless, whatever. He's a better Lantern than he ever hoped to be. And again, it's deconstructing the hero, the classic hero, the white guy from the comics. And now we're saying he's being put out to pasture. He's no good. He might even be killed. He says a line in the film, in the trailer, something like, I'm going to do this to the day I die. That's very ominous, given, they're just building up Jon Stewart in this. They want to put him in the Justice League. And that's all to do with the animated series in the 90s. They used Jon Stewart because they didn't want the team to be, quote unquote, too white. And, that's why later on, when we didn't have a Green Lantern, because they had orders from on high not to use Green Lantern, we got Cyborg as the affirmative action replacement. But again, this is not going to endear themselves to any Green Lantern fan who knows that Hal is the beginning and end of the Green Lantern Corps. You know what I mean? He is the one that everybody thinks of when you say Green Lantern. Now, the most recent generation, again, are going to be used to Wally West. They're used as the Flash. They're used to Jon Stewart. But for the classic comic fan, Hal Jordan is the gold standard as Green Lantern. And he does say, he introduces himself to some felon or thug or something as, I'm Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. Again, I don't think they're trying to be as coy with this as, say, Arrow, where they didn't even call him Arrow for the longest time. They called him the Hood, because CW was even more afraid. That's why Superman, Superboy was called the Blue-Red Blur, or the Red-Blue Blur, which was equally embarrassing. But they didn't have a problem with that because, you can't use the name, but we can't use a funny name. But in this case, they used the name. I think in Arrow, it was at least 2 seasons before they called him the Green Arrow, right? And I think they made a joke about it in the first season. I think, what was it? John Barrowman, says, why don't we call him the Green Arrow? And Stephen Amell is like, that's a silly name. And it's like one of those things where, we're going to make a joke about the name. we're going to make a joke at the hero's expense. I don't really think that's happening here. I think they're just too afraid to make this a high-flying fantasy. They want to make it grounded. I don't think this is so much spitting in the face of fans as much as they're just not going to give you what you want because they're going to appeal to a different audience. And I thought we were beyond this now. I thought we would be past this in 2026 where we're trying to appeal to everyone but the audience. But again, we're still doing that with Batman. Batman still does not have a movie, and I pray and hope that they're going to do one, that James Gunn is going to do one with Robin, with Dick Grayson, that is going to introduce Batgirl and the Bat family. You know, Robin eventually will become Nightwing. That is the stuff that we have not been allowed to see because, again, Warner Brothers and the DC heads have been too afraid to go anywhere with Batman beyond his first few years, and he only has Alfred, and he fights the mob and villains who are wearing, you know, ridiculous handmade costumes and smeared on makeup. That's the extent of what they'll allow Batman to go against. And it's like they got 1970s, it's like the Hulk from 1970s. Well, all you got is the Hulk. It's like Superman from, you know, the 50s. Well, all you got is Superman, and there's gangsters. You got the Hulk, and there's gangsters. Now we've got guys with power rings that can make them fly and go to space and create whatever they think of. And they're going to fight cowboys? Corrupt politicians? I don't know. And that's another thing. Well, a lot of people that are trying to defend this are saying, well, you got to remember the Neil Adams era where they did Green Lantern, Green Arrow team up, and they went into the inner cities. They, you know, because the famous page they always show where Green Lantern is getting berated by an old black man who says, "You're doing everything for the purple-skinned people out there in space. Why don't you do something for the black-skinned people down here on Earth?" And Green Lantern is aghast at that. He has to think, well, maybe I shouldn't be running around in space. Maybe I can do stuff on Earth. And Green Arrow, of course, is the big liberal who's sort of, and Hal is supposed to be the more conservative, and he's like taking him on a road tour of America to try to help people in America. But the thing is people don't want to really remind you of this, but that really wasn't that popular. It was groundbreaking, but you can be groundbreaking and still be boring. Nobody really wanted to see that, and it lasted 2 years. Now, 2 years in the comic business, especially back in the 70s, that's basically a blip on your radar. I mean, that didn't really... I mean, Wonder Woman, they did the same kind of, tried to revamp her for the times or whatever. That lasted even longer, and that wasn't well received either. So, I mean, that's not, you know, I mean, just because it's in the comics, that's like something that a lot of people hide behind. Just because it's in the comics didn't really mean it was popular or successful. And I think if you're trying to do that here, for one, you're doing a terrible job at it, really. And for two, that wasn't a storyline, I don't think, that people were clamoring to see in 2026. In 2026, we're ready for the Green Lantern to go to space. We don't want to see him looking like he's already lived his life. He's beat up. He looks like he slept in his clothes. He looks like he hasn't had a shower in a week. You know what I mean? Is this what we want to see out of Hal Jordan? And that's why I think, you know, it's just not for me. And again, I think there's a possibility they can salvage this in a second season, depending on what they do this season. You know, if they don't kill off Hal, if they don't make him do something completely insane where you say, come on, you've poisoned the well with Hal, maybe you can salvage this. It's possible. But again, I'm getting Snyderverse vibes from this. And I thought we were beyond that. You know, I don't want to see grizzled Hal, like I didn't want to see grizzled Batman 10 years older than the oldest member of the Justice League, and they're just going to carry on after his sorry butt is taken out and replaced by Jon Stewart. That is not fair. to Hal Jordan. It's not fair to the fans. And I think people wanted to see like a buddy cop film or series with these two. I mean, that's not the problem. I mean, I would like to start with Hal, and then, like we were doing with the Ryan Reynolds movie, and you build yourself up to Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner, and all that stuff can happen after the first film or two. But if you want to start this way, that's not really the problem. The problem is you come up against, what are you going to do going forward with a hero that's already seen his best days? He's already fought all there is to fight. He's not a contemporary of Barry Allen and Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. He is at least 10 years older. We've got a Superman who's like pushing 30, and this guy is like, I don't know. I mean, to be generous, I'll say he's like 55. That's not where you start your universe, unless you want to pretend that this is not in the continuity, but I think we already know it is with what we know of Guy Gardner going to show up on the show. So again, let me know what you think in the comments below. I suppose I've exhausted this topic as much as I can, but like I said, there are some things where the trailer tells you everything you need to know. I don't just beat up on everything that comes out. Oh, look what he said there. That means it's going to be awful. Oh, look at this. The costume don't look particularly... No, I'll give you a chance. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. If you deserve it, if you've earned it. That reminds me of like Starfleet Academy. This is another show that I'm not going to get the streaming service to watch. Now, I'll get the streaming service to get Daredevil Born Again Season 2. But I could tell just by looking at what I've seen of Starfleet Academy that it is terrible. And I do not want to invest any time or money in watching it. And it's a case like that with this too. Now, I mean, again, I could be wrong. I'd like to be wrong. But I don't think the trailer is telling you anything different. They're not subverting your expectations. This is what it is going to be, and this is not what I want to see. So you can tell that by the trailer in most cases. Maybe not in some cases. I think it was a bait and switch with The Force Awakens. I think they kind of led us to believe different with that film, and I really won't go into that all over again, but it turned out to be a disaster. But from what we'd seen in the trailer with Luke talking and, Han Solo, sort of being familiar as the character, we kind of had hope. I don't really see this as being anything than what they're showing us. All right, so let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to have this conversation continue. Join me on Twitter, and you will see more comments about this as I continue to go off on it. Remember to check the link in the description below. You can pick up a copy of The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye and take advantage of our 50% off sale on Global Comics until the final week of March. Get it as a gift, an Easter gift. Or if you love what I'm doing with the show, if you love what I'm doing with my Twitter page, following me there, pick up a copy just as a nice thank you. That would be great. I would love it. And so, until next we meet, this is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.